Some guys get sad and broken when they're alone, but others get stronger. For 10 years, Silas Boone lived by himself in the mountains, thinking he's too scary for any girl to love. The folks in town called him a monster after a big fight made him leave. He decided to stay away from people, especially girls, and only hung out with the forest. But one spring day, he went to town for stuff and saw a wedding auction at the church. Girls were being paired with guys they didn't know. Silas was going to walk by, but then he saw Clara up at the altar being forced to marry an old banker to pay her dad's debts. Something inside him woke up, something he hadn't felt in years. Before anyone could stop him, he walked into the church and said, "I haven't seen a girl in 10 years. Everyone got quiet. Then he kissed Clara like it was the most important thing ever and told the preacher, "Marry us now." But can a guy from the mountains who forgot how to be soft win the heart of a girl who forgot how to trust? Before we keep going, tell us where you're listening from. If you like this story, hit that subscribe button, 'cause tomorrow I've got something super cool for you. The morning fog stuck to Elkhorn Ridge like old memories that won't go away. Silas Boone stood on his cabin porch, watching the sun peek through the pine trees, making the ground glow golden. He held a tin cup of super strong coffee, so bitter it could wake up a rock. He did this every morning for 10 years, 3 months, and 16 days. Not that he was keeping track. The old hunting knife at his belt shined in the sunlight, its handle worn smooth from years of use. His dad gave it to him when he turned 16, and his grandpa carried it in a war. Now it was just a tool to survive, like the axe for chopping wood or the rifle that scared off wolves. Sometimes, when the wind was quiet, Silas could almost hear his dad's voice saying a man's knife is part of his heart. Silas rubbed his big, bushy beard, feeling the rough hair he let grow wild. He was a huge guy, 6'4", all muscle and tough bones, with shoulders strong enough to carry a whole elk down the mountain. His hands were scratched up from years of building stuff with wood and metal to live alone. The town used to call him a giant, but now he felt like a ghost wandering the mountains. The fight that sent him here felt like forever ago, but the memories still stung like cold wind. It started over land, like fights always do. The Kellerman family wanted to grow their ranch and eyed the valley where Silas's family lived for 3 generations. When his dad said no to selling, the Kellermans got mean, burned barns, poisoned cows, and one cold. October night came for his dad with torches and rope. Silas was 28 then, just married to a nice girl named Mary who made awesome apple pie. He tried to do things right, going to the sheriff with proof, thinking justice would win. But the Kellermans had money and power, and the sheriff was on their side. So when they came for his dad again, Silas was ready. He met them at the edge of his land with his grandpa's rifle and dad's knife, telling them to leave or die. The Kellermans made a bad choice. 3 guys died that night, including old Jeremiah Kellerman. Silas stood over them as the sun came up, blood on his hands, smoke rising from his burned barn. The sheriff showed up with half the town, and Silas saw fear in their eyes. Not respect, but the kind you feel for wild animals or crazy people. "You went too far, Boone," the sheriff said, hand on his gun. "Killing like that makes you as bad as them." "They came to my land," Silas said, his voice calm even though his heart was a storm. "They threatened my family. A man protects what's his." But the town had already decided. Mary left him that week, scared of the blood on his hands and the empty look in his eyes. She packed up while he buried the dead and left town without a note. The message was clear. The man she married was gone, replaced by something dark and scary. The town turned on him, too. No one would sell him stuff or hire him. Kids ran away when they saw him. In a month, Silas Boone became a spooky story, a warning about good guys turning bad. So he packed what was left of his life into a wagon and went to the mountains, following old hunting trails until he found a spot, a bowl-shaped place surrounded by steep rocks, easy to defend with just one rifle. There he built his cabin by hand, cutting logs and fitting them tight, like his grandpa did for the family home. The cabin was strong and cozy, with thick walls and a stone fireplace that warmed every corner. He built it to last, with windows facing south for winter sun and a porch for summer nights when it was too hot inside. It wasn't fancy, but it was home. The first real one since Mary left. The years went by with the seasons. Spring was for fixing the roof and planting a small garden to go with his hunting. Summer meant stacking firewood and saving meat. Long days of hard work kept him too tired to miss his old life. Fall was for harvesting and getting ready for winter, which tested his strength and patience. In winter, snow piled higher than his windows, and the world shrank to just his cabin. He learned to live with quiet. At first, the silence drove him nuts. No voices, no laughter, no little sounds of people living together. He started talking to himself, then to animals that came by, and finally to the mountain, like it could talk back. But slowly, the quiet became his friend. It meant safety, being alone and being himself without saying sorry. The mountain didn't care about the blood on his hands or his choices. It just let him be part of it. Another creature trying to survive. He almost believed this was enough, that he could live on being alone. But then he ran low on supplies, and coffee was worth more than gold, so he had to go to town, like it or not. 20 miles below, in the valley where Copper Creek ran fast and clear, Cedar Falls was waking up to a morning everyone would talk about forever. Clara Wynne stood in front of a cracked mirror in her boarding house room, looking at herself with more giving up than fear. The wedding dress was white satin, old and yellowed, smelling like lavender and mothballs. It belonged to Mrs. Henderson, the banker's wife, who lent it out of so-called kindness. But Clara knew it was the mean kind of pity from someone who never knew real struggle. The dress was too big in some spots and too tight in others, reminding her this marriage wasn't her choice. She touched the silver locket at her neck, her dad's last gift before he died of fever. Inside was a tiny photo of her mom, gone 15 years, and a lock of hair from her baby brother, who lived just 3 days. It was all she had left of her family, and soon even that might be gone. Her dad, bless his heart, was a good guy, but a terrible businessman. He trusted bad people, made bad deals, and died owing more money than he could ever pay. The debt went to Clara, and with it came Banker Fitzgerald's pushy demands for payment. "You're a pretty girl," he told her last week, his creepy eyes staring too long. "Too pretty to worry about money. There are other ways to fix this." His offer, if you could call it that, came in a letter, fancy writing saying he'd cancel her debt if she married him. He was 53, twice widowed and known for shady business deals, but he was the most powerful guy in Cedar Falls, and he usually got what he wanted. The wedding auction was his idea, a big show to make Clara's shame public. He called it a kind event to help single girls find husbands, but it was really about showing everyone who was boss. Clara tried to find another way. She begged every businessman in town for a job or a loan, but Fitzgerald's power reached everywhere. No one would hire a debtor's daughter when it might upset the guy who owned their loans. So there she was, about to walk down the aisle in a borrowed dress to marry a man she hated, all to pay for her dad's mistakes. The irony wasn't lost on her. Her dad always said a girl should choose her own path, that she was too smart and strong to let any guy decide for her, yet here she was, about to become someone's property. Outside, the church bell rang, calling people to see what Fitzgerald called a party, but Clara knew it was her dream's funeral. She closed her eyes and prayed, not for rescue. She gave up on that weeks ago, but for strength to get through it and remember who she was when everyone else forgot. A knock came at her door, and Mrs. Henderson's voice called, "Time to go, dear. Don't keep the banker waiting." Clara took one last look in the mirror, stood tall, and opened the door to face her future. She didn't know that 20 miles away, a mountain man was putting on his grandpa's knife and coming down from his lonely life for the first time in 10 years. Some mornings change everything, and you don't see them coming until it's too late. The Cedar Falls chapel was packed that weekday morning. Every seat was full of townsfolk watching what Fitzgerald called a marriage event, but everyone knew it was a show to prove his power. Over the week, Silas pushed through the crowd at the back of the church, his big body making people whisper and stare. He planned to trade his furs for coffee and bullets, then get back to the mountains before anyone remembered why they feared him. But the crowd got his attention, and now he was stuck in the middle of something that made him sick. 3 girls stood at the front dressed in white, looking like they were facing a firing squad, not a wedding. The youngest, maybe 16, was crying and holding her mom's hand. Second was a widow with tired eyes and rough hands that showed she was poor. And then there was Clara. Even from the back, Silas could see she was trying to be brave, standing straight with her chin up, staring past the crowd like she wished she was somewhere else. Her dark hair was pinned up fancy, not like her, and the dress didn't fit right, like she was forced to wear it. But her hands caught his eye. They were shaking just a little, the kind of shake only someone who knows fear would notice. Banker Fitzgerald stood at the altar like a spider in a web, a skinny guy with pale skin and cold eyes that judged everything. He wore a fancy suit and a fake smile, acting like the town's hero while putting on a mean show. "Ladies and gentlemen," Fitzgerald said loudly, "we're here today to kindly help these girls find good husbands from our best men." The crowd mumbled like they agreed, but Silas saw women looking uneasy and men more interested in the show than helping. This wasn't about kindness. It was about power and control, showing everyone who ran Cedar Falls. "First up is Miss Sarah Morrison," Fitzgerald said, pointing to the youngest girl. 16, great at cooking and good at house stuff. Her family needs a husband who can support her. The bidding was quick and ugly. Sarah got matched with a rancher twice her age who looked at her like she was cattle. Her tears fell harder, but no one cared. The widow went next, paired with a shopkeeper who needed someone to watch his kids and clean his house. At least he looked kind, though both were desperate. Then it was Clara's turn. "Miss Clara Wind," Fitzgerald said, sounding extra pleased. "Daughter of the late Thomas Wind, schooled back east, good at books, music, and fancy manners. A rare flower looking for a husband who sees her worth." Silas felt his chest tighten as he watched Clara's face. She kept it blank, but he could see how hard it was. Her neck stiff, her breath held between Fitzgerald's words. "Now, which fine gentleman wants to offer Miss Wind the safety of marriage?" No one spoke. Everyone knew Clara came with debts that could ruin most men, and only Fitzgerald was rich enough to take them on. This whole show was set up to make his claim look generous, not what it was, collecting a debt. "Come on," Fitzgerald said after a long silence. "Surely someone sees what a deal this is. Miss Wind is a beautiful, talented girl who'd make any home better." Still, no one spoke. Clara's calm broke just a bit. She closed her eyes for a second, a tiny move that felt private, like Silas was seeing something special. That's when he acted. The crowd moved out of his way like water splitting for a boat. His boots thumped loud on the church floor, each step pulling him toward something he didn't understand but couldn't ignore. "I haven't seen a girl in 10 years, he said, his voice booming in the quiet church. The words hung heavy like smoke after a shot. Fitzgerald's smile slipped, then disappeared when he recognized the mountain man who killed 3 Kellermans in one night. Clara's eyes flew open, and for the first time, she looked straight at someone in the crowd. Silas reached the altar in 6 big steps, filling the space like a storm. Up close, Clara was even prettier, delicate with smart green eyes that held secrets he wanted to know. But it was her mix of fear and bravery that decided it for him. "Marry us," he told the preacher, his voice firm, no arguing allowed. Before Clara could say a word, before the crowd could react, before his own brain could catch up, Silas took her face in his rough hands and kissed her. It wasn't soft or shy. It was the kiss of a guy who'd been alone for 10 years, who forgot what it felt like to touch someone kindly instead of fighting. Clara froze, surprised, her hands pushing his chest, but something in the kiss, maybe his need, his loneliness, or how carefully he held her despite his rough look, made her stop. For a moment, she kissed him back, her lips soft and warm. The crowd went wild. Women gasped. Men yelled, and Fitzgerald's face turned red with anger. "You can't! This isn't right! She's promised!" Fitzgerald shouted. "To who?" Silas turned, keeping one arm around Clara's waist. "I didn't hear any promises." "I heard a girl offered. For marriage, and I'm saying yes." "She owes money," Fitzgerald sputtered. "Her dad's debts." "How much?" Silas asked, sharp like a knife. Fitzgerald's mouth flapped before he said a number that made half the crowd gasp. Silas pulled a leather pouch from his coat, heavy with gold coins. Payment for 10 years of furs he'd saved for no reason until now. "Will this cover it?" He poured the gold onto the altar, shining in the church's morning light. The room went dead quiet. Even the kids stopped wiggling, feeling something big was happening. Clara stared at the gold, then at the stranger who'd just spent his life savings. "To free her." "Who are you?" she whispered. "Silas Boone," he said, "and if you'll have me, I'd like to be your husband." The preacher, Father Mackenzie, a nervous guy not trained for this, looked from Silas to Clara to the angry banker and back. "Do you, Miss Wind, take this man as your husband?" Clara looked into Silas's gray eyes, warm like a storm with something soft inside. Behind her, she felt Fitzgerald's fury like heat from a fire, knowing if she said no, she'd be trapped forever. "I do," she said, her voice stronger than she felt. "And you, Mr. Boone, take this woman as your wife?" "I do," Silas said, no doubt in his voice. Father Mackenzie's hands shook as he wrote the marriage paper, his pen scratching loud in the quiet church. When it was done, with their names signed in black ink, he looked relieved. "By the power of Montana Territory, I say you're husband and wife." The marriage paper lay on the altar, ink still wet, tying them together stronger than chains. Clara stared at it, half expecting it to vanish. This paper that freed her from Fitzgerald and tied her to a man she met 5 minutes ago. Silas folded it carefully, tucked it in his pocket, and offered his arm. "Shall we go, Mrs. Boone?" The name hit her like a punch. Mrs. Boone, she was married to a stranger, a mountain man who spent everything to save her from another man's debt. The weight of it settled over her like a heavy blanket. But as they walked down the aisle, past shocked neighbors and Fitzgerald's red-hot anger, Clara felt something new. Hope. It might be silly, it might be risky, but for the first time since her dad died, her future wasn't written by someone else. The marriage paper crinkled in Silas's pocket as they stepped into the spring morning, a legal tie between two strangers who bet their lives on a quick choice, and a kiss that tasted like freedom. The trip up the mountain was quiet, just the clip-clop of Silas's horse and the creak of wagon wheels on rough stone. Clara sat beside her new husband on the wagon bench, hands in her lap, feeling every bump pull her farther from her old life. Her city shoes, fancy leather with tiny buttons, were already useless for this new world, made for parlors and churches, not rocky paths where one wrong step could twist an ankle. They pinched her feet and they hadn't even reached his cabin yet. Silas seemed to notice her squirming without looking. "Not much farther," he said, his deep voice louder than the wagon noise. "Another hour, maybe less." Clara nodded, not sure what to say. The truth of what they'd done was sinking in like mud settling in water. She was married to a guy she'd never talked to before today, going to a place she'd never seen, to start a life she couldn't picture. Mountain air was thin and cold, smelling of sap, wildflowers, and maybe snow, even though it was spring. The forest closed in tight, with old trees blocking the sky, their branches thick like they'd been there forever. "You're not what I expected," Clara said, the words slipping out. Silas glanced at her, one eyebrow up. "What did you expect?" "I don't know. Someone meaner, I guess. The stories people tell about you in town are probably true," he said quietly. "I've done things, Mrs. Boone. Killed men who needed killing, but killed them anyway. If that scares you, I get it." Calling her Mrs. Boone felt weird, like wearing someone else's clothes. She was used to being Miss Wind, the banker's debtor, the daughter of a failed businessman. Mrs. Boone might fit someday, but not yet. "Are you gonna hurt me?" she asked, her voice small. Silas stopped the wagon so fast Clara grabbed the bench to stay put. He turned to her, his gray eyes serious. "Never," he said. and she believed him completely. "I'm a lot of things, Clara. Killer, loner, a guy who forgot how to be around people, but I'd never hurt a woman. My mom taught me better, and my dad would haunt me if I did." Hearing her first name, not Mrs. Boone, made her relax a little. "Then why?" she asked. "Why marry me? You don't know me." Silas looked at the forest like it had answers. "I saw you standing there," he said. "You looked trapped, alone, with no good choices. I've been alone for 10 years, Clara. I forgot what it's like to want to protect someone besides myself." He clicked to the horse, and they moved on. But the silence felt different now, less heavy, like two people starting to understand each other. The cabin, when they saw it, wasn't what Clara expected. She thought it'd be rough, with mud walls and a dirt floor. Instead, it was sturdy and well-made, like Silas put his heart into it. The logs fit perfectly, smooth and gray, blending with the forest. The roof had neat shingles, and real glass windows caught the afternoon light. A big porch, wrapped around two sides with chairs for watching the sunrise. Clara could picture sitting there with coffee, seeing the mountains turn pink and gold. The idea surprised her. It felt nice. "It's beautiful," she said, meaning it. Silas looked happy but tried to hide it. "Built it myself," he said proudly. "Took 2 years, but I wanted it done right. A man needs a home that lasts." He helped her off the wagon, his big hands gentle on her waist. For a moment they stood close, and Clara smelled him. Wood smoke, pine soap, and something strong that made her heart beat faster. Inside, the cabin was even better. The main room was big and warm, with a huge stone fireplace that could heat the whole place, even in winter. The floors were smooth wood, polished shiny like honey. Handmade furniture, a table, chairs, a bookshelf with old books, showed Silas. "Spent long nights making useful things. Bedroom's there," Silas said, pointing to a door. "I'll sleep on the couch out here until you're okay with something else." Clara's cheeks got warm. She was married now, with duties she'd never done before. It scared her, but also made her curious. "That's kind of you," she said, looking at her useless shoes. "I'm not ready for mountain life. These shoes, for example." "We'll figure it out," Silas said. "I've got stuff that might work for now, and next time I go to town, I'll get what you need." His kindness was harder to handle than anger would have been. Clara was ready for cruelty, but this gentle stranger left her feeling wobbly. "Why are you so nice to me?" she asked. Silas was quiet, adding wood to the fireplace. "Maybe 'cause no one's been nice to me in a long time," he said. "Maybe 'cause I know what it's like to be scared and alone, and I don't want that for anyone." That night, Clara lay in Silas's bed, their bed, though he kept his promise to sleep on the couch, staring at the ceiling beams he'd carved. The mattress was comfy, filled with feathers and covered with quilts that smelled like lavender and cedar. Through the door, she heard him moving, banking the fire, getting ready for the night. The sounds felt homey, like someone making a house safe. For the first time in months, Clara fell asleep without worrying about tomorrow. Her city shoes sat by the bed, already out of place. Tomorrow would bring new challenges: cooking on a wood stove, tending a fire, living without city comforts. But tonight, Clara Boone slept feeling safe. Outside, the mountain wind whispered through the pines, and an owl called to its mate, a sound of partners sticking together through long nights. In the main room, Silas lay on his couch, staring at the fire's embers, wondering what he'd gotten into. He'd been alone so long that hearing Clara breathe in the next room felt strange but precious. He thought about her bravery in the church, how she looked Fitzgerald in the eye despite her fear. He thought about her calling his cabin beautiful, and the trust she showed by coming here and believing he'd never hurt her. Tomorrow, he'd teach her to survive this place, and she'd need to trust him with more than just safety. But tonight, for the first time in 10 years, Silas Boone wasn't totally alone. That felt like a miracle. Clara woke to the sound of an axe chopping wood, each swing echoing off the mountain like a steady heartbeat. Soft morning light came through the windows, and she smelled wood smoke and maybe coffee. She dressed fast in yesterday's clothes, her only clothes, and went to the main room. Through the window, she saw Silas splitting logs, his shirt wet with sweat even in the cool air. Each axe swing sent wood chips flying, and the pile of logs grew bigger. Coffee was brewing over the fire, filling the cabin with a yummy smell that reminded Clara she hadn't eaten since yesterday. Her stomach growled loud, and she pressed her hand to it, embarrassed, though no one heard. "Morning," Silas said, coming in with an armload of wood. "Hope the chopping didn't wake you." "Morning," Clara said, feeling messy. Her hairpins were loose, strands falling around her face. "The coffee smells great. It's strong," he warned, setting down the wood and pouring her a cup. "I make it thick enough to float a rock. You might want to add water." Clara took the tin cup, loving its warmth. The coffee was super bitter, dark like mud, but it was hot and woke her up. Exactly what she needed after yesterday. "I should learn to make coffee," she said, sipping, and trying not to make a face. "And breakfast, and, well, everything. My school didn't teach useful stuff." Silas looked at her over his cup, his gray eyes curious. "What did you learn?" "Books, mostly. Music. I play piano, but that's no help here. French, even less helpful. Painting, sewing, stuff to make me a good wife, I guess." She laughed. "But it wasn't funny. It worked, sort of, just not how anyone thought." "Can you read?" Silas asked. "Of course. I studied books. I mean, can you read recipes, instructions, books that teach useful things?" Clara blushed, embarrassed. "Yes, I can read anything. I just never needed to read practical stuff." Silas nodded and got a thick old book from a chest. "This was my mom's," he said, handing it to her. "She wrote in it for 30 years. Recipes, remedies, house tips, anything worth passing on." Clara opened it carefully. The pages had neat handwriting in faded ink. Bread recipes, meat-preserving tips, cures for headaches to broken bones. Someone added notes in the margins. Wisdom from a woman who knew how to make a home in tough times. "It's beautiful," Clara said, touching a page about sourdough starter. "She must have been amazing." "She was," Silas said softly. "Came here with my dad when this was wild land. Raised 4 kids, buried 2. Never complained, never gave up, never let hard times break her." His voice had a softness that didn't match his scary reputation. Clara looked up to see him watching her with a look she couldn't figure out. "What happened to her?" she asked. "Fever took her when I was 25, he said. "Same winter that killed half our animals and froze the wells. Dad said she just got tired of fighting and let go." He paused, then added, "I think she'd like you." That simple sentence hit Clara hard. This guy barely knew her, but thought his mom would approve. It was a gift she didn't expect and wasn't sure she deserved. "I'll try to be worthy of her book," Clara said, holding it close like a promise. The morning passed with small lessons. Silas showed her how to keep the fire going, adjust the stove, and know when coffee was ready by its sound. Clara was eager but new at this. She burned the first biscuits, made weak coffee, and filled the cabin with smoke by messing up the stove. But she listened to Silas's kind corrections and tried again. By afternoon, she made a meal that was sort of edible. "Not bad for a first try," Silas said, eating a slightly burned biscuit. "My first cooking attempt nearly poisoned me." Clara laughed, her first real laugh in months. "You're being nice. These biscuits could fix the roof. Maybe the next batch," Silas said, pretending to be serious, making her laugh again. As the day went on, Clara felt herself relax in a new way. There was something calming about doing simple tasks, feeling good about learning with her hands. More than that, Silas's patient teaching and quiet jokes felt healing. He never made her feel dumb for not knowing things he did easily. When she struggled with the tricky stove, he showed her how to listen to the fire. When the water wouldn't heat right, he explained where to put the pot, always patient, always kind, never talking down to her. Late afternoon, Clara found something that changed things between them. While Silas was outside with his horse, she explored the cabin, getting to know her new home. She opened a chest at the bed's foot and found a beautiful quilt, folded carefully, smelling of cedar and lavender. It had interlocking rings in blue and gold, every stitch perfect, made with love and skill. That was my mom's wedding quilt, Silas said from the doorway. Clara hadn't heard him come in, too caught up in the quilt's beauty. Sorry, she said, starting to fold it. I shouldn't have. It's okay, he said, sitting on the bed beside her. She said it was meant to be used, not hidden. She made it the winter before marrying my dad, working by candlelight. Clara touched the stitching, picturing a young woman making this for her wedding. It's incredible, she said. She was so talented. She was. Silas agreed. She said a quilt's like a marriage. Lots of little pieces that don't mean much alone, but put them together with care, and they're beautiful and strong forever. The words felt heavy, meaning more than just the quilt. Clara looked up to see Silas watching her with a look that made her breath catch. For a second, she thought he might touch her, close the gap, and make their marriage more real. Instead, he stood and said, I should check the horse, dinner in an hour. Yes, Clara said, her voice small. I'll try not to burn anything. After he left, Clara sat with the quilt, thinking about marriages and patience, how beautiful things grow from pieces that seem unrelated. She thought about Silas's gentle way of talking about his mom, the care he put into this cabin, the trust he showed sharing her book and quilt. Mostly, she thought about the look in his eyes that made her heart race, hinting their marriage could be more than a deal if they were brave enough. Outside, Silas brushed his horse more than needed, trying to sort out what happened. Clara looked so right, with his mom's quilt, like she belonged in a way beyond papers and deals. He wanted to kiss her again, properly, without the rush of their first meeting. He wanted to tell her she was brave and beautiful, and that he was thankful for her in ways he couldn't say. But it was too soon, too much, too likely to scare her off. She trusted him to come to his mountain, sleep in his home, and try to build something from their broken lives. The least he could do was give her time to decide if she wanted more than safety. Time, he told himself, brushing the horse steadily. They had all the time to see what could grow, like seeds in good dirt finding their way to light. 3 days into their marriage, a wanted poster showed up. Clara was hanging laundry on a line, Silas, strung between pines when she saw him coming up the trail, his face serious, holding a paper flapping in the breeze. What is it? She asked, already dreading the answer. Silas handed her the poster. Her face stared back from a rough sketch. Not perfect, but close enough. Below, in big letters, it said, Missing, Clara Wind, last seen with dangerous fugitive Silas Boone. Reward for her safe return. Fugitive? Clara said, looking at him. Is that what you are? Seems so, Silas said, bitter. Fitzgerald's been busy. Got the territorial marshal and half the men in 3 counties looking for us. Clara read the fine print. He's offering $500, she said. That's more than most folks here see in a year. I know, Silas said, crumpling the poster. We need to talk about what this means, Clara, for both of us. They sat on the porch steps, the sun warm on their faces, as Silas explained. Fitzgerald had power across the territory and didn't take losing well. He told the law Clara was kidnapped by a known killer who'd do anything to stay free. But, we're married legal and all, Clara said. The marriage paper won't matter if they say I forced you, Silas said. Fitzgerald's probably got witnesses ready to swear I threatened you, and my reputation won't help. Clara felt a chill. What are you saying? If they find us, they'll arrest me for kidnapping or worse, and you, they'll drag you back to whatever Fitzgerald has planned for shaming him in front of everyone. The truth hit hard. They weren't just a new couple learning to live together. They were fugitives, hunted by men with guns and badges who thought they were right. How long do we have? Clara asked. Hard to say, Silas said. This mountain's tough to find. If you don't know the way, but if they bring enough men, it could be days or weeks. Depends on how bad Fitzgerald wants you back. Clara thought about the banker's creepy eyes and cold smile. He wants me back real bad, she said quietly. That afternoon, Silas taught her a new kind of survival. He showed her how to load and shoot his spare rifle, how to aim and pull the trigger smoothly. I can't, Clara said after her first shot missed the target by a mile. I've never hurt anyone. You're not hurting anyone, Silas said patiently. You're learning to protect yourself if someone tries to hurt you. That's different. He set up a tin can as a target and stood behind her, helping her hold the rifle. Feel how it pushes against your shoulder, he said, his breath warm by her ear. Don't fight it, just be ready. Breathe out, then squeeze. Don't hold your breath or you'll shake. Clara tried again, focusing on his words, not her fear. Her second shot was closer, and the third hit the can's edge, making it spin. Better, Silas said, proud. You've got steady hands. Just need practice. They practiced for an hour, Clara getting better each time. By the end, she hit the can more than she missed, though the loud bang still startled her. Why teach me this? She asked as they walked back. If they find us, wouldn't it be easier for you to run alone? Silas stopped and faced her, serious. You think I'd leave you when things get tough? Clara, you trusted me when you had no reason to. You came to my mountain, slept in my home, tried to make a life with a guy everyone fears. I'd never repay that by running. Clara saw something in his eyes that made her heart race. This wasn't just about papers or deals anymore. In 3 days, their marriage had started to feel real. What are you saying? She asked softly. I'm saying you're my wife, Clara Boone, not just on paper, but for real. And I protect what's mine. His possessive tone should have scared her, but it warmed her instead. For months, she'd felt helpless. But with a rifle in her hands and Silas beside her, she felt strong. That evening, they sat by the fire, planning their defense. Silas drew a map of the cabin's approaches, showing narrow trails where a few shots could stop a bigger group. We've got the advantage up here, he said, pointing. They'd have to come single file, and we'd see them from far off. But if they surround us? Clara asked, surprised by her own calm. We'll deal with that if it happens, Silas said. Clara studied the map, thinking like a planner. What about supplies? If we're stuck, we'll need food, water, bullets. Got plenty of food. And bullets, Silas said. Water might be tricky if they cut off the spring, but there's a system under the cabin to last a week or two if we're careful. They talked late, planning for things they didn't want to think about. But Clara felt a change. They weren't strangers sharing a cabin. They were partners, a team against a threat. When they went to bed, Silas paused at the door. Clara, if something happens to me, there's a stash under the floorboards by the stove. Gold, bullets, supplies to get you to Canada if you need. To run. Nothing's happening to you, Clara said firmly. But if it does, we face it together. I'm not running, Silas. This is my home now, too, and no one's taking it from us. Silas looked at her, his face showing gratitude and maybe love. Good night, Mrs. Boone, he said softly. Good night, Mr. Boone, she replied, and the name felt right for the first time. In their room, Clara lay awake, hearing the mountain's night sounds, thinking how 3 days changed her life. She wasn't a helpless debtor's daughter anymore. She was Clara Boone, wife to a mountain man, defender of her home, a woman with a rifle, and the know-how to use it. Outside, an owl called, and a wolf howled far off. But inside, safe in the cabin Silas built, Clara felt safer than ever. Tomorrow had challenges, and the crumpled poster in Silas's pocket meant trouble wasn't over. But tonight, Clara believed they could survive, not just alone, but as a couple facing everything together. A week passed quietly. Clara got used to mountain life fast, waking before dawn to tend the fire and make breakfast while Silas checked snares and trails. Her city shoes sat in a corner, replaced by tough elk-hide boots Silas made, soft and perfect for her feet. She was grinding coffee on the porch when she saw Silas standing still at the clearing's edge, holding a spyglass, watching the valley like he could spot danger itself. What is it? Clara asked, putting down the grinder. Riders, Silas said, not lowering the glass. 3 or 4, about 2 miles down the trail. They're acting casual but looking hard at every path, like they're hunting something. Clara's heart sped up. Are they coming here? Not yet, but they're close to the turnoff to our trail. Silas put away the spyglass. We need to be ready. The next hour was fast and focused. Clara loaded both rifles while Silas hid anything outside that showed they were there. Laundry, tools, even wood chips. Soon the cabin looked empty, like no one had lived there in months. Remember our practice, Silas said as they took spots by the windows. Don't shoot unless I say. If shooting starts, aim for the middle. Don't get fancy. Clara nodded, checking her rifle again, her pulse pounding. Through her window, she saw the narrow trail to their clearing, the only way up without climbing steep rocks. They waited. The silence stretched until Clara wondered if she imagined Silas's worry. Then she heard it. Horses stepping carefully up the trail, saddles creaking, men talking low. "Stay calm," Silas whispered from the front window. "I'll do the talking." 3 men came out of the trees, leading their horses up the tricky path. They looked like cowboys, but their movements said they were more, spreading out without talking, hands near their guns, like pros. The leader, a lean guy with a droopy mustache and sharp eyes, called out from 50 yards away. "Hello, house! We're looking for info on a missing woman, Clara Wind. Her family's real worried." Silas stayed quiet, watching through the shutters. Clara saw his jaw tighten when her name was mentioned. "We know someone's here," the man said, moving closer. "Saw chimney smoke yesterday. Just want to ask questions, make sure the ladies—" "Okay, that's close enough," Silas called, his voice strong. "Say what you want and leave." The men stopped, but Clara noticed they spread out so no single window could aim at them all. "Definitely pros." "Name's Carter," the leader said. "Deputy Territorial Marshal with my buddies. We're investigating Clara Wind's disappearance from Cedar Falls. Know anything about that?" "She got married, legal, in front of half the town," Silas said. "What she does after is her and her husband's business." Carter's face got hard. "Her family says she was forced by a wanted man. That makes it our business." "Show me a warrant," Silas said. Carter laughed. "No humor in it. Don't need a warrant to ask questions, friend. But we can search any place we think a crime happened." Clara gripped her rifle tighter. Through her window, she saw one man inching left, trying to get a side angle on the cabin. He moved like he knew what he was doing. "Ask your questions from—" "There," Silas said. "One more step and we've got trouble." "We?" Carter asked, voice sharp. "Who's we, Mr. Boone? Got someone with you?" The question hung heavy. Clara realized she'd just been confirmed, making Silas look guilty to these guys. "Mrs. Boone's under my protection," Silas said carefully. "She's where she wants to be. Why not let the lady speak?" Carter said. "Mrs. Boone, if you hear me, come out and talk. If you're here by choice, we'll say sorry and leave." Clara looked at Silas's window, waiting for his signal, but he was focused on the men, rifle ready. The silence grew until Carter lost patience. "Okay, boys," he said. "Looks like we do this the hard way." Clara saw the man on the left move toward the cabin's blind spot, and she knew talking was over. But before she could warn Silas, she heard her own voice, loud and clear. "I can speak for myself. Thank you." The word surprised her as much as the men. All 3 turned to her window, hands on their guns. "Ma'am," Carter called, trying to sound nice. "Are you Mrs. Clara Wind?" "I'm Mrs. Clara Boone," she said, stressing the name. "And I'm right where I choose to be." "Your family's worried, ma'am," Carter said. "They say you were forced to marry against your will." Clara felt hot anger. "My family's dead, Mr. Carter. The only one worried was Harold Fitzgerald, and he cared more about money than me." "Be that as it may," Carter said. "We've got reports you might be in danger. Come out so we can see you're okay." "So you can drag me back to Fitzgerald, who tried to buy me like a cow?" Clara snapped, surprising even Silas. "No thanks." She felt the men's attitudes shift, their easy confidence turning hard. They expected a scared victim, not a woman defending her home. "Mrs. Boone," Carter said, dropping the friendly act, "I'm going to have to insist you come with us. There are questions about your marriage that need answering in court." "The only question," Clara said, "is why 3 armed guys think they can barge onto private land and threaten a married woman." Silas's shoulders shook. He was trying not to laugh despite the danger. It gave Clara courage. "If you're worried about me," she added, "know I've learned to shoot pretty well up here, and unlike my husband, I don't have a reputation for being nice." The threat hung like a storm about to break. Carter and his men looked at each other, rethinking their plan. "Okay, Mrs. Boone," Carter said finally. "You've made your point, but this ain't over. People in Cedar Falls won't take your word, and they've got the law." "Then let them come with real warrants," Clara said. "But next time, they better bring more guys." Carter's face turned red, but he signaled his men. "Mount up, boys. We got what we came for." As they rode off, Clara's legs shook from the scare. She'd just threatened 3 armed lawmen, defended her home like a fort, and found a boldness she didn't know she had. That, Silas said from across the room, sounding proud, was amazing. Clara looked at him, seeing his face clearly now. His eyes held something deep that made her breath catch. Was it dumb? She asked. Probably, Silas said, but also brave and exactly what needed saying. He stepped away from the window, rifle down but still in hand. They'll be back, with more men and better plans. Clara nodded, knowing this was just the first test. How long do we have? Days? Maybe a week if we're lucky, Silas said, his face serious. Clara, what I said about running, I'm not running, she cut in. This is our home and no one's taking it. Silas took her hands, his rough fingers gentle. Even if it means fighting? Even if people get hurt? Clara thought about her dad's locket, Fitzgerald's greedy eyes, and this cabin Silas built. Especially then, she said quietly. Some things are worth fighting for. Silas kissed her knuckles, his tenderness making her heart race. Then we better get ready, he said, 'cause our quiet days are about over. 2 days later, Clara found a blood-stained letter while organizing. The pantry, stuck behind a loose board. At first it looked like scrap paper, but when she pulled it out, she knew it was big. It was addressed to her dad in Fitzgerald's fancy handwriting, dated 2 weeks before his death. Clara's hands shook as she read it. Thomas, it started. Your refusal to take my offer leaves me no choice. Your debts are real, and not paying has consequences. Meet me at the old mining office tomorrow at 9 p.m. Come alone to settle this, or I'll collect in ways you won't like. H. Fitzgerald. Clara read it 3 times, the truth hitting her. It was dated the night before her dad was found dead in bed, supposedly from fever. But he'd been healthy. No fever, no illness. Everyone blamed his weak heart and money stress. Silas, she called, her voice shaky. He came fast, sensing her worry. What is it? Clara handed him the letter, watching. His face darkened with every word, his jaw tight. Where'd you find this? He asked quietly. Behind the pantry, hidden in a crack. Someone wanted it safe. Silas studied the bloodstains and rushed writing. This is proof of murder, Clara. Your dad didn't die of fever. Fitzgerald killed him, and this shows he planned it. Clara felt cold fury, not just grief. He murdered my dad, then tried to marry me to hide it. The debts, the auction, it was all to keep me quiet. Who hid this here? Silas asked. And why our cabin? Clara thought about the timing, the careful folding, the tight-hid spot. Someone who knew this place, could get here unseen and wanted the truth to come out, Silas said. This wasn't meant to be destroyed. It was meant to be found. They searched the cabin all afternoon, finding more surprises. In the root cellar, behind a barrel, was a stash, coffee, bullets, and gold coins. Under a floorboard by the fireplace was another letter, in different handwriting, addressed to Silas. If vows. You're reading this. Clara found my evidence, and you know Thomas Wind was murdered. I'm Jacob Morrison, night clerk at Fitzgerald's bank. I saw things I shouldn't. By now I'm likely dead, but I wanted the truth out. Clara gasped. Morrison? Like Sarah Morrison from the auction, his daughter. Silas nodded grimly, reading on. He says Fitzgerald killed your dad 'cause he found out the banker was stealing from the town's emergency fund. Your dad threatened to tell, so Fitzgerald poisoned him with arsenic. The letter listed other crimes, fake loans, wrong foreclosures, years of theft and fraud. Jacob Morrison documented it all, unnoticed as a quiet old clerk. He knew he was in danger, Silas said. Fitzgerald was asking who saw the bank records, so Jacob hid evidence in places, including here. Why here? Clara asked. The letter's last part answered, I heard about Silas Boone, the Kellerman fight, why he went to the mountain. People call him a killer, but I knew his dad, and I know the man he raised. If I'm gone, I trust the mountain man will use my evidence to protect my daughter. There's no law in Cedar Falls Fitzgerald can't buy, but there's justice in men who protect the innocent. Clara's eyes teared up, thinking of Jacob Morrison risking everything to save his daughter from her fate. He succeeded, Silas said, folding the letter. Sarah got matched with a rancher, not Fitzgerald. He made sure she had a way out, even if he couldn't save himself. Clara stood, pacing to the window, staring at the mountains. "We have to go back," she said. "What?" "To Cedar Falls. This isn't just about my dad. It's about everyone Fitzgerald hurt. We can't hide while he keeps hurting people." Silas studied her. "Going back means facing those marshals, a town where half think I'm a fugitive and the rest fear Fitzgerald." "I know," Clara said, turning to him. "But it means clearing our names, making Fitzgerald pay for everyone he hurt." "It's dangerous, Clara. More than staying here." She took his hands. "You said some things are worth fighting for. This is one. Justice for my dad, safety for people like Sarah, the right to live without fear." Silas saw her strength, the woman who'd grown from the scared girl at the altar. "When do we leave?" he asked. "Tomorrow," Clara said, no hesitation, "before Fitzgerald can cover his tracks." That night they prepared carefully. Clara packed the evidence in a waterproof pouch, letters and documents. Silas cleaned their guns, checking bullets twice. "There's something else," Silas said. "Once we go down, everything changes." "What do you mean?" Clara asked. "Up here, we've had time to let our marriage grow slow. Down there, we'll need to show everyone we're united. People will watch, judging if our marriage is real." Clara blushed, understanding. "Are you asking if I'm ready to be your wife for real?" "I'm asking if you want to be," Silas said quietly. "To convince them, it has to be real. No separate beds, no polite distance, true partners." Clara thought about their weeks together, the trust and feelings growing, how safe she felt with him. "Yes," she said, "I want to be your wife, Silas, in every way." His face showed surprise, relief, and something deeper. He cupped her face, gently, like in the church. "You sure?" he asked. "'Cause once we do this, there's no going back. You'll be mine, Clara, and I'll be yours." "I'm sure," she whispered, leaning up to kiss him. This kiss was slow, deliberate, private, not desperate like the first, but chosen by two people who knew what it meant. When they parted, Clara felt complete, like a puzzle piece clicking into place. Tomorrow brought danger, but tonight they were husband and wife, sealed by a love grown in mountain air like wildflowers in rocky soil. The blood-stained letter sat nearby, proof of crimes that would change everything. But for now, in their cabin's warm light, Clara and Silas held each other, ready to face what came as true partners. Dawn broke cold and gray over Elkhorn Ridge, mist hanging in the valleys like smoke. Clara stood on the porch one last time, watching the sunrise paint the peaks pink and gold, while Silas loaded their horses. In her hands was his grandpa's rifle, worn smooth by years of use. Silas gave it to her last night with its bullet belt. "It was my grandpa's in the war," he'd said. "My dad used it against the Kellermans, and I've kept this mountain safe with it. Now it's yours, Clara. Use it to protect what matters." The rifle was heavy, not just in weight, but in meaning. She wasn't a helpless debtor's daughter anymore. She was Clara Boone, ready to fight for justice. "Ready?" Silas asked, bringing the horses. Clara looked at their home, the strong. Walls, bright windows, porch for quiet evenings. It might be a while before they saw it again, if ever. "Ready," she said, slinging the rifle over her shoulder and walking to her horse. The ride down was tricky in the dim light, the trail wet with dew and hiding rocks. But their horses were mountain smart, stepping carefully down the twisty path to the valley. Silas shared what he knew about Cedar Falls. Carter and his deputies went back after failing to get Clara, but left spies and paid watchers. Fitzgerald hired more men, fighters and bounty hunters not bound by martial rules. "He's made the town a war zone," Silas said, guiding his horse. "Anyone who might help us is scared or bought off." "What about Father Mackenzie?" Clara asked. "He did our wedding. He'd say it was legal." Silas's face darkened. "Mackenzie left town 3 days after our wedding. Word is he got a better job in California, but people say he looked scared." "Packing up," Clara shivered. "If Fitzgerald scared off a priest to silence him, what would he do to them?" They rode quietly for an hour, lost in thought. The trail widened, nearing the main road to Cedar Falls, where they'd be spotted fast. "There's something I need to say," Clara said as they rested the horses by a stream. If we don't win, if the evidence isn't enough, I want you to know I don't regret this. Our marriage, coming to your mountain, fighting back. I'm glad I got to know the real you. Silas stood from checking his horse's hooves. We'll win, he said. But if we don't, Clara pushed. I've never felt more alive than these weeks with you. You gave me courage to be me. Silas took her hands, his rough palms, comforting. You had that courage all along, he said. I just gave you a reason to use it. He kissed her, soft and tasting of coffee and mountain air, a promise of a future they might not see. I love you, Clara said, the words easy despite their size. I know we started as strangers, but somewhere, I love you too, Silas said, voice rough. More than I thought I could after Mary. You brought me back to life, Clara Boone. They held each other by the stream, in the wild place that became their home, ready to leave it for a fight that would decide their fate and others too. They couldn't ride into town in daylight. Too many watchers, and Fitzgerald's men would shoot first. Instead, they circled wide, coming from the east via an old mining road with cover from empty claims. First, we get the evidence to someone who can use it, Silas said, dismounting in a cottonwood grove, hiding them but showing the town. Judge Harrison's in town, today. If we reach him before Fitzgerald knows, we've got a shot. Clara checked the pouch with Morrison's letters and evidence. If we can't reach the judge, we make sure everyone hears, Silas said grimly. Sometimes public opinion is the only justice. They watched the town all afternoon, seeing too many armed men at key spots. Fitzgerald had turned Cedar Falls into a fortress, with guards at the hotel where Judge Harrison stayed, watchers on every road, and shady guys near the church and store. It's like walking into a trap, Clara said, watching a rifleman pace by the hotel. Every trap's got a weak spot, Silas said, lowering his spyglass. They don't know this town like we do. As evening came, they made a plan. Clara would go first, using old mining tunnels to the basement of Morrison's empty house. From there, she could reach the hotel and Judge Harrison. Silas would make a distraction on the other side of town, splitting Fitzgerald's men. It's risky, Silas said as they parted. If they catch you before you deliver the evidence, then you keep fighting, Clara said firmly. This is bigger than us now. Too many have suffered from Fitzgerald. Silas cupped her face, eyes intense in the dusk. Promise me, if it's justice or survival, choose survival. I can't lose you, Clara. Only if you promise the same, she said. We both go home, or neither does. They kissed, fierce and desperate, then started toward the town holding their fate. Clara's trip through the tunnels was scary, crawling through tight spaces, following Silas's directions from his childhood 30 years ago. The tunnels smelled of dirt and rot, and she had to stop to breathe when the rock above felt crushing, but it worked. She came out in Morrison's basement as darkness fell, her clothes dirty, hands scraped. The house was cold and empty, windows dark, filled with the ghost of a man who died doing right. From there, she saw the hotel, lights on, guards at both doors. Getting in would take timing, luck, and a crazy plan. Meanwhile, Silas prepared on the other side of town. His grandpa's rifle was ready, with enough bullets for a small army, but he planned to distract, not destroy. An old church, hit by lightning last summer and left to rot, was perfect. Its bell tower stood, giving a view of the town and a spot to make noise to draw Fitzgerald's men from the hotel. Climbing the creaky tower stairs, Silas thought about the irony. They married in a church, and now another might decide their fate. At 9 p.m., Clara moved. She slipped from Morrison's house, timing her run to the hotel's back door with the guards' patrol. The door was locked, but a window was just latched, and she was small enough to climb through quietly. The back stairs led to the second floor, where Judge Harrison was, per the register she saw. She climbed carefully, avoiding creaky steps, heart pounding loud. Room 7 had light under the door. Clara paused, gathering courage, then knocked softly. "Judge Harrison," she whispered. "I'm Clara Boone, and I have proof of murder you need to see." The door opened fast. A chair scraped, footsteps came, and the bolt slid back. A silver-haired man in his 60s with smart eyes looked at her messy clothes. "Mrs. Boone," he said calmly, "I wondered when you'd show up. Come in quick. Clara." Was shocked he expected her. "You knew I'd come?" Judge Harrison locked the door. "I've heard stories since I got here about a rich banker, a woman supposedly taken, and a mountain man who might not be the bad guy he's called. I was thinking of looking into it myself." Clara felt hope as she spread Morrison's evidence on his desk. "You'll want to see this," she said. The judge's face got grim as he read the blood-stained letters. "This is bad," he said. "If half of Morrison's claims are true, Fitzgerald's been running a crime ring for years." "It's all true," Clara said. "He killed my dad to hide his stealing, then tried to marry me to keep me quiet." Judge Harrison's eyes were hard. "Mrs. Boone, if you'll swear to this in court, I can issue warrants tonight to stop Fitzgerald." Relief hit Clara so hard her knees wobbled. They'd done it. Justice was coming. Gunshots from across town sliced through her joy, single shots, then rapid fire. Silas's distraction had turned deadly. "That's my husband," Clara said, moving. "To the window. I have to—" "Stay and finish your testimony," Judge Harrison said firmly. "If your husband's who you think, he'd want you to finish this." More shots rang out, and Clara pressed her hand to the window, torn between duty and love. Silas was fighting for their lives, trusting her to complete their mission. "Tell me everything," Judge Harrison said. "Pen ready. Start from the start. Every detail. Tonight, we end Fitzgerald's terror." As Clara spoke, the battle raged across Cedar Falls, and she prayed she and Silas would live to see the justice they fought for. The church bell that saw their wedding now rang for Fitzgerald's downfall. Judge Harrison signed warrants before dawn, and by sunrise, marshals surrounded Fitzgerald's mansion. Honest lawmen in Cedar Falls had to choose, stand for justice or fall with corruption. Clara stood with the judge on the courthouse steps, her testimony done, evidence recorded. The morning, sun lit the town in gold, but Clara worried. Silas was missing. The night's gunfight ended in silence, and no one knew if he was alive. "Mrs. Boone," Judge Harrison said, "your courage stopped future crimes. Whatever happens, you've served justice well." Clara nodded, watching the crowd gather in the town square. Word of the warrants spread, and people came to see the man who controlled them brought down. "There," Judge Harrison said, pointing to Fitzgerald's mansion. "They're bringing him out." Fitzgerald walked out in handcuffs, flanked by marshals, looking nothing like the powerful banker. His clothes were messy, his skin pale, his eyes nervous, searching for friends who weren't there. The crowd watched him pass down Main Street, some satisfied, some relieved, a few scared of how close they'd come to ruin. "Where's Silas?" Clara asked Marshal Carter, who turned out to be honest once Fitzgerald's crimes were clear. "We're looking, ma'am," Carter said. "Sorry, last night's shooting was messy, and we're not sure who was who." Clara's heart tightened. Silas was supposed to distract, not fight a war if he was hurt or worse. "Clara." His voice broke through her fear like sunlight. She turned to see Silas pushing through the crowd, clothes torn, blood on his face, but alive. She ran to him, hugging him so hard he stumbled. "I thought you were dead," she whispered, breathing. His wood smoke scent. "Takes more than hired guns to kill a Boone," Silas said, holding her tight. But it was close. "Fitzgerald had more men than we thought, and they were ready." Over Silas's shoulder, Clara saw Fitzgerald, his face twisted with rage when he spotted them. "This isn't over," he shouted. "You think you've won, but I've got powerful friends. I'll be free in a week." "Mr. Fitzgerald," Judge Harrison cut in, voice firm, "save your energy for trial. With this evidence, you face murder, theft, fraud, and conspiracy. Your friends won't help when federal marshals take over." Fitzgerald paled. Federal courts were beyond his reach. For the first time, he looked scared. "You can't prove anything," he said weakly. "Morrison's dead. His word's no good." "We've got more than Morrison," Clara said, stepping forward, holding Silas's hand. "We found your letter to my dad, the one you sent the night you killed him." The crowd gasped, some realizing the truth about her dad's death. Fitzgerald's calm broke completely. "You don't get it," he snarled. My money kept this town alive. Without me, it'll die. Better a poor town than a crooked one, Judge Harrison said. Marshal Carter, take him to his cell. We've got evidence to sort for trial. As Fitzgerald was led away, the crowd whispered excitedly. Clara and Silas stood alone in the square that saw their wedding and Fitzgerald's fall, the church bell in the distance. It's really over, Clara said, hardly believing it. The legal part, Silas said. But one more thing. He led her to the church where they met. Inside, a new priest, Father O'Brien, was setting up for services. Father, Silas said, can you do a service for us? You're already married, the priest said, confused. I've got the record here. We are, Clara said, understanding Silas. But our first wedding was rushed. We want to say vows again. Properly, with clear hearts. Father O'Brien smiled. I'd be honored to renew vows for the couple who brought justice to Cedar Falls. At the altar where their story began, Clara thought about the last 3 weeks. She wasn't the scared girl in a borrowed dress, and Silas wasn't the lonely exile anymore. Do you, Silas Boone, take Clara as your wife, in good times and bad, for as long as you live? I do, Silas said, strong and sure. And you, Clara Boone, take Silas as your husband, in good times and bad, for as long as you live. I do, Clara said, meaning it completely. When Father O'Brien said they were husband and wife again, their kiss was in warm sunlight, not a shocked crowd, sealed by love they fought for. The church bell rang, not in warning but in joy, echoing across Cedar Falls and up the mountains, saying justice won and love beat corruption. Clara and Silas left the church hand in hand, ready to go home as true partners. The town they freed was healing, while their mountain home waited where their love grew strong enough to move mountains. The bell kept ringing as they rode toward the trail, joining birds, wind, and water in a new world made by courage and love. Their future's big fight came not in court or town, but on the mountain trail home. 2 miles from Cedar Falls, 5 armed men blocked a narrow pass where escape was impossible. Their leader was Vincent Kellerman, youngest son of the man Silas killed 10 years ago. He was older, scarred, driven by hate and revenge since that bloody night. Hello, Silas, Vincent said, calm but ready for violence. I've waited a long time for this. Silas pulled his horse up, shielding Clara. Vincent, he said, wondered when you'd face me. Courage? Vincent laughed. No joy in it. You killed my dad and brothers, ruined my family, then hid in these mountains like a coward. Clara felt Silas tense, holding back against words meant to make him mad. She remembered his stories about the Kellerman feud, the wrongs that led to violence, and the guilt he carried. Your dad came to my land with rope and torches, Silas said calmly. Your brothers were with him. I gave them a chance to leave. You murdered them, Vincent yelled, hand near his gun. I defended my family and land, Silas said, voice firm. Same as any man, same as you would. Clara saw this fight was always coming. Tied to Silas's past, he couldn't escape. But now, Silas wasn't alone. He had her to protect, and she had a role to play. Mr. Kellerman, Clara said, riding up beside Silas. I'm sorry for your loss, but what happened 10 years ago isn't about me, and it doesn't need more blood today. Vincent looked at her, curious but mean. The famous Mrs. Boone, married to a killer, helping him dodge justice. Do you know what he did to my family? I know he protects those he loves, Clara said steadily. I know he builds instead of destroys. And I know revenge won't bring your family back or fix your pain. Pretty words, Vincent said, but they won't save him or you. The threat hung heavy. Clara felt Silas ready for a fight, but also the weight of her new silver ring made by Silas to mark their true vows. You're right, Clara said, taking off her gloves to show the ring shining in the light. Words won't save us, but love might. She got off her horse, ignoring Silas's gasp and Vincent's curse. Standing in the pass with 5 armed men, Clara did something Cedar Falls would talk about forever. She walked to Vincent and held out her hand. I'm Clara, she said. I want to know your name, not the revenge guy, but the one your mom called when you were little. Vincent stared at her hand like it was dangerous. What's this trick? No trick, Clara said. Just a woman trying to understand why you'd die today for something before I was born. You don't get it. I get loss, Clara said gently. I get anger, the need for justice, how grief eats you until... Revenge is all you've got. I felt it when I learned Fitzgerald killed my dad. Something flickered in Vincent's eyes. Maybe surprise or connection. Then you know why I have to do this. I know why you think you do, Clara said. But I chose justice over revenge, building over destroying, living a life my dad would be proud of. She pointed to Silas, who watched like he expected a trap. Your dad and brothers chose violence, not law. Don't make their mistake. Vincent's hand moved from his gun, though his men stayed ready. You're asking me to forget 10 years of hate. I'm asking you to remember 10 years of pain, Clara said, and decide if you want another 10 like that. The wind and a hawk's cry broke the silence. Clara stood in the pass, surrounded by danger, but strong in her truth. Vincent looked at Silas. You killed them, he said. Yes, Silas said, not backing down. They gave me no choice. I've carried that weight every day, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone. Good, Vincent said, 'cause living with what you did is worse than dying. He signaled his men, who lowered their guns. Unhappy. We're done, Vincent said. But Silas, if you come down this mountain and I think you're a threat, this ends differently. Understood, Silas said quietly. Vincent rode past. With his men, silent and grumpy. Clara watched them go, then turned to Silas, who looked at her with awe. What you did, he said, shaking his head. I've seen men face armies with less courage. Clara's knees shook now that it was over. I couldn't let you face him alone, she said. Not when there was another way. Silas pulled her into his arms, holding her close as the wind whispered. You saved my life, he said. Not just from guns, but from becoming a man who'd kill to protect you. Clara looked up, seeing his truth. He'd have fought Vincent, adding more deaths to his guilt if she hadn't stopped the cycle. We saved each other, she said, touching her ring. That's what partners do. They rode on to their mountain, home, leaving old feuds behind. Clara's ring caught the sun, a sign of their true bond, not the rushed deal in a church, but a choice by two people who found strength in each other. Cedar Falls kept healing, while their cabin waited, where their love grew strong enough to move mountains and wise enough to choose mercy. The ring shined like starlight, proof that some bonds come from choosing to face life together. 1 year later, Clara stood on the cabin porch, watching the sunrise paint Elkhorn Ridge pink and gold. Her hands rested on her belly, where a baby grew. A hand-carved cradle rocked in the breeze, Silas's latest work, made from pine and polished smooth during snowy nights. The cradle showed what their mountain home had become, a place for love to grow freely, where two people built a life by choice, with a bright future ahead. Up early again, Silas said, bringing 2 coffees, their morning habit. Baby's active in the mornings, Clara said, taking her cup. I think they like the sunrise, like we do. Silas sat beside her, arm around her shoulders, natural as breathing. The valley below was wild and beautiful, mist rising, birds singing. Any regrets? He asked, their little joke. Just one, Clara said, leaning into him. I wish it didn't take a crooked banker and an auction to find you. If I'd been braver, I could have come to this mountain sooner. Everything happened how it needed to, Silas said, hand on hers over her belly. We weren't ready before. We had to break a little to learn what.